Ladies and gentlemen, the upcoming session is on blockchain and intellectual property, protecting digital assets. Let's welcome our panelist. The first panelist for the session is Mr. Rishi Ganiswaran, Head of Legal Technology and Chief Privacy Officer at Yinson Group of Companies. Let's have a huge round of applause, everyone, for Mr. Rishi Ganiswaran. The second panelist is Mr. Ezra, Chief Legal and Compliance Officer at Travala.com. Let's have a huge round of applause, everyone, for Mr. Ezra. The third panelist for the session is Mr. Dixon, Director, Head of Intellectual Property and Intangible Assets Practice, CHP Law LLC. Let's have a huge round of applause for all our panelists, everyone. The stage is now open, sir.
Hi, everyone. So I guess this is probably the last session before lunch, so we'll make it interesting. So the topic for today is, of course, blockchain technology and one of my favorite areas of law, intellectual property. So before we go on into blockchain and all this, I think let's introduce ourselves. So I am Rishi Ganiswaran. I am the Head of Legal Technology and the Chief Privacy Officer for the Yinson Group of Companies. We are primarily energy conglomerate and also delving into renewables and green technology as well. So I'll let my colleagues Ezra and Dixon introduce themselves. Guys.
Hi everyone, thanks for coming. I'm Ezra. I'm a crypto and fintech lawyer. Been in fintech for quite some time, even before it became well known. So have always been dealing with areas of uncertainty when it comes to regulation and product structuring and so on. Something I quite enjoy and looking forward to having this panel.
Hi, I'm Dixon. So I don't have any other skills. I only do IP. That's the only thing I do for a living. Before I came back to practice, I was officer with IP Office Singapore. So if you guys have read the Singapore IP Strategy 2030, that was part of it was my major work for most of the 2 years in COVID. So I'm here to just weighing a bit on the IP part of blockchain, but these guys are the blockchain experts, so you go to them.
So let's start off with IP itself. Now you have heard of the word intellectual property and there's a lot of elements that falls under that. And then you have heard something called intangible assets. So what is the key difference, maybe towards Dixon in this in particular, what is the key difference between intangible assets and the term intellectual property?
Okay. Okay, so I think IP is something we are quite familiar with for most of us, trademark, copyright, patent and things like that. It has been a HO industrial term for IP lawyers generally. Intangible assets has been there also, but almost equally long time, but it's more a financial term for most of the time. But increasingly, when you look at IP itself, right, you are looking at IP in a bigger form, how it applies in the commercial world. Simple illustration, we all know trademark, what trademark is, and that's IP. Intangible assets is a wider, softer one, it's called branding. Academically, these are two different assets, but if you look at the commercial application itself, they actually work hand in glove. How does it work? If you have a trademark, but have not done much branding on it, then basically you're not adding any brand value to it. So valuation will be a problem. But if you're doing a lot of branding, strong branding, but no trademark protection, no legal protection, you are a big magnet for squatters and infringers. So these two come together actually help your company to roll and move generally. So today's world, I think when we look at IP itself, right, we have to look at how IP and IA generally interact within the operational elements of your business.
So what about data? Any kinds of commercial data, trade secrets? Trade know-how, would they fall under intangible assets or IP?
Yeah, essentially, let's look at trade secret itself. Trade secret by itself, there's a legal definition for it, but it's actually, if you look at it from the asset classification purposes, it's actually more intangible assets. But data itself can be both, right? Raw data by itself is an intangible asset because you don't know what to do with. But data sets, databases itself, they're copyrighted.
Okay.
Yep.
Is there anything from you?
I guess in terms of, I mean, obviously that was the framework that we need to put in place, but my role will come in when how you implement blockchain to protect these kind of things. So just a rough overview, blockchain could be used in a variety of ways. And one of the main reasons why we look at blockchain is because it provides a proof of registration or proof of authenticity, which anybody can verify at any time. And nobody can change it on their own unless there is common consensus. So that's usually how the blockchain works. So for instance, if you bought a Rolex watch from Rolex directly, and then you want to sell it at a later date, how would the person know that the Rolex is real? Usually they send it to an authenticator, and then they have to basically like take it apart and to sort of tell whether it's a real Rolex, and then look at the inner detailing and the machining and all that. So that's actually a very difficult process, because you can't just like Google whether or not the ID number is legit. You need a very manual process. So blockchain can help in this aspect by allowing the producer of such goods to upload and provide a database on the blockchain, one that would be verified by multiple parties in the supply chain or in the resale market. So I think what Rolex tried to do earlier on was they tried to create their own kind of verification system, like process, where they would actually verify second-handed watches. Yeah, and the next step, if they wanted to take, right, would be to upload all these details onto the blockchain, so that it would be verifiable by anyone at any time, and it cannot be changed. Yeah, and the difference between the weakness of having a centralized blockchain is that somebody could hack into it or amend it, and nobody would know, right? It would be difficult to tell. But then if it's on the blockchain, not one party cannot change it anytime.
I think, yes, you're absolutely right. But I think let's explain to them, because we have discussed what IPIA is, but we short of we also need to explain to all those who are not familiar with the blockchain. So what exactly is blockchain technology? Maybe you can just elaborate on that.
So we usually call it a distributed ledger, right? A ledger is a record. And why is distributed? And is in the sense that it is not controlled by any one person at any one time. So you take the most popular blockchain, Bitcoin, right? The Bitcoin framework was written a number of years ago, I think almost 10 years ago now. But it cannot be amended by any one party at any one time. Everybody that in this manner, all of us will process this and we all agree. Yeah. And if let's say there were parties who do not agree, then it would not work out. It will not work out because not one person has control at any time. It's not really like Ethereum, where it's a bit more centralized, where they can sort of make a hard fork and change the blockchain without so much of needing people to agree. So what happened actually was Ethereum moved into a different form of processing method, which is what we call proof of stake, and there used to be proof of work. In the past, Ethereum used to be mined by machines, machines that basically uses a lot of electricity, and they uses a lot of graphic processing units. So when Ethereum did that, the miners actually wanted to, they actually rebelled and wanted to stop processing the transactions. But they were able to basically convince the miners not to do that and still upgrade it anyway. So that is one difference between what is centralized and what is not so centralized.
Okay, so let's talk about the application of how this blockchain will come into play in respect of the various industries that we are relevant with. Let's start with Dixon. Maybe in terms of the industries that you are involved in, how much of a play would blockchain be applicable?
I think at the moment, as far as IP is concerned, blockchain is rather important in the creation of assets itself. Mainly, let's look at creative media. It's easier to understand. Traditionally, the person will start building certain things, coding for the game features, writing a story, building certain copyright on their own. But this is the core assets of the industry, right? You don't really know who is doing what at the point, and how do you attribute rights, especially when there are changes to things. Like for example, if you have, let's say have contractors doing it for you, as for 2020 itself, the copyright law has changed in Singapore, whereby the creators own the creation even in a work contract, as a freelance work contractor. So by able to actually track all those, right, you will know all the gaps where you need to close up. And so when you actually deploy them as a commercial product, you are basically more assured that this basically has been, all the cleansing has been done, you're unfettered by any other people's rights before you go in, and you give confidence to it, especially when you are a licensor licensing it to other countries, for example. So I think that this is one of the things I can look at, yeah.
How about Ezra, in your industry, how does blockchain come into play?
So I've always been a finance lawyer, starting from banking and now in fintech. So not directly related to, although we do get involved in some IP. Yeah, we always have to register trademarks, right? Yeah. How I think, I mean, without going into the wider aspect of how blockchain applies across the board, which is be too wide to discuss. There are ways in which blockchain can protect intellectual property in all the ways that we currently protect it, actually. So in trademarks, as patents, even trade secrets. I think Dixon was talking about it the other day, about how it can use to demonstrate that a trade secret was invented or registered, started on it.
Yeah, along those lines itself, trade secret is still a bit iffy. I mean, conceptually, it does work. When you lock it out of a box, you lock it in, and this is a trade secret will go. Or basically, when you are in a situation, it's something I designed for a client recent enough. It's basically about confidential information. Yeah. So you run the chain, everything else. The idea of having a blockchain in is that when you are sharing certain technical information with the other side in collaboration itself, right? Yeah. The ledger system, useful, because lock it in. You cannot say you have no access, and I know who access to it. Right? If it's breached out, there is very little possibility that it goes beyond that. So what it means is that it doesn't help you to be very successful very quickly in a full-on court session, but you can at least get an ex parte injunction done pretty quickly based on that.
But that's the issue that I feel a bit uncomfortable with. Okay, the fact that all of this information is in a kind of a ledger kind of profile. Now, confidential information is one thing. Trade secret, let's say if my entire formula is there, would I want to put it up on a blockchain? If it's leaked, yeah, I can get all the injunctions you want, but I'm screwed for life. So how do you justify that?
So on on this, right, the what has been currently discussed is that it would be sort of encrypted, or you only provide the metadata of the substance of your trade secret. So anybody who can see it doesn't understand what is it about. But it is more or less used to prove to the court or any tribunal having jurisdiction that this existed at this time, and this is the public information, although people would not be able to understand it. So the key to deciphering it is not available publicly, but the record is.
I see. So it's not everything is in the ledger itself. It's more like...
it's basically like you hack into a tech company's database, and the whole thing is encrypted, so there's no value. You don't understand what you're saying.
I think also another thing is that when we look at trade secret, right, it will be misunderstood position if you look at trade secret as one piece of work. It's multiple pieces anyway, right? So when you lose one piece, right, whether it's a big piece, it's up to you. It's just like our clients who go to OEM, you never go to one. You got 3 or 4 of them, right? So break it up a bit, yeah.
Okay, so when we talk about blockchain, we also have to talk about something else called smart contracts. Now, so how do you deal with such smart contracts when it comes to IA and IP? When you're dealing with such parts of IA and IP, how efficient is smart contracts, or how is your experience in dealing with smart contracts? Because I personally have not dealt with smart contracts. I'm not sure if either of you have been familiar with that.
Again. I think smart contract is still at the developmental stage. Conceptually, it works. I mean, a lot of things in law we know. Conceptually, academically, it works very well in the logic circuit. But when you want to apply to it, I think it comes to the point where you're only dealing with contracts that are very predictable and very, very narrow or almost no room for negotiation. Your health insurance, for example, right? Maybe the bill, the shipping process, I think those works pretty well because these are very standard and they only run on a certain dimension and qualify in terms of the table. But when it comes to something more fluid, like for example, game licenses itself, right? There are more elements that are moving itself. Of course, the ledger part, you can look at all the versioning and who agrees to what. But is that a more efficient way? That's where it comes from. The tool works, but for game lawyers like myself, right, does it really work? I would say it works to a certain extent, it locks on the commitment, but generally I still prefer the old way of negotiation for those kind of contract, yeah.
So in terms of IP protection, I suppose it would be fair to say that the current method is dependent on each jurisdiction's own IP database and own IP authorities to sort of do the research, check to make sure there's nothing similar, allow opposition. It's very, very slow. It's very, very slow. And it's very manual. And a lot of it is sort of based on, you know, is your IP lawyer or your IP registration company on the ball enough to know that when there is something coming that is a potential opposition or potentially similar, would you actually oppose? Correct. So if your firm or your registration company doesn't know, right, then it might just go through sometimes, and then you have to oppose later after the registration goes through, which is a bit more difficult, right? So this system is very inefficient, okay, and it's very inaccurate. It's not very accurate. I would say it's not very accurate. Yeah, at least for trademarks. And I think for patents it's a little bit better, but for trademarks it's quite poor. Yeah. So how we can avoid this kind of inefficiency? I don't think blockchain kind of solves the whole problem altogether. Actually, okay. I think using AI may help. Yeah, it may help too, especially in the process of identifying what is similar. And whether or not the original registration should be notified to oppose, or maybe oppose automatically, something like that. So there's a lot of areas in which that process can be improved. But in terms of blockchain, I think blockchain will only help by providing more access, easier access. Although I think the current system is, in terms of finding out if there's a similar mark, it really is very manual. Basically, is you use your own eyes to look. You go through the list and you see for yourself what is similar and what is not. So it's a lot of, it's not very, it's a lot of personal judgment.
Yeah. So I'm just looking at all the various practical applications of possible blockchain, let's say patents, trademarks. I mean, from the top of my head, let's say I can perhaps do some infringement issues. Maybe you can clearly, it's be on the ledger, right? Or maybe proof of use. So in terms of patents, for example, what are the usefulness of using blockchain technology?
Oh, actually, again, it's actually the creation of the assets by itself. So I share an example in terms of copyright and things like that. Now you're talking about collaboration. Collaboration is obviously a sticky affair, right? Especially you want to slice certain things away from each other, which happen at the end of collaboration anyway. Yeah. So you need to lock in what was created at a certain point, and all the milestone meetings and all this. So it's a very good project management tool. At the end, right, to determine who has what right to a certain extent over the IP assets, right? The normal general thing, if we're getting lazy, right, I'll just go, okay, let's have joint ownership, right? There are other problems. It's easy to get that agreement agreed among the parties. But in collaboration, whereby parties have very specific duties to develop certain of their background IP into certain foreground IP to merge, that blockchain structure, right, will be able to actually inform the party on where are we going with this one.
Okay, but okay, besides patents, maybe other aspects of like copyright and trademarks, any other applications in terms of those realms of IP?
I think like trademark is another thing itself. Very often, like some places like Philippines, US, they have this structure called the Declaration of Use. Yep. So you just declare them. So it's a blank declaration. Yep. No one really checks, to be very frankly. But let's say you are able to log in into a system whereby to check, so you can actually thin down the trademark in the registry, because there are a lot of people that actually trademark doesn't use, right? The other one is also when you challenge someone actually when you invalidate your mark, or sorry, want to revoke your mark based on non-use itself. If you are able to record your that your mark has been used in these places for marketing and everything else, right? And by that, right, I think that will give you an easier way, right, to chase off the challenges. Yeah.
All right. So, how about you, Ezra? Any?
was just thinking about how poor is like copyright protected actually. Yeah, because in the past IP lawyers used to say, oh yeah, you post the letter to yourself just to prove that this is what you invented. This is your.
That was when I entered the industry. We no longer do that.
Yeah. So actually, right, like even in many jurisdictions, there's no centralized database. In certain jurisdictions only. So I was thinking, right, if actually there is a user-managed kind of copyright system where you basically just upload and file to show that this is what you've created, you could probably mask half of it, but at least the public ledger would show that this is what you made, right? Actually, if this could actually improve copyright protection, because right now it's quite poorly protected. For music it's good, but for other things it's very bad. Yeah. That's why people always end up using other people's art, and they don't even know.
These are things that keep me alive. Don't take it away from me. But I agree with you. I think copyright itself does have more. Because if you look at most of the aggrieved parties in copyright dispute, right, they are much more less resourced, right? They need something that gives them at least a chance to negotiate or mediate into a favorable settlement where they get some benefit and everything else. No one said they need to go to the court all the way. But they must be able to give them something that can arm themselves to at least have a conversation on the balance table. That's how I look at it.
Now, that's one thing that caught my attention. You see, we have a singular technology, blockchain, or maybe we're using smart contracts, but we're dealing with different jurisdictions with varying thresholds of IP management, protection, and laws. Now, is it possible that we could have a smart contract or some kind of blockchain ledger that would have difficulty when we're doing cross-transactional issue, like cross-jurisdictional issue, I mean. When I'm talking about, maybe I'm dealing with American law, Chinese law, or European law, and any issues that because of the different jurisdiction we are dealing with, under a singular platform technology, any issues have you guys encountered so far?
I'm not sure you agree with me. Like, this is a Web 3.0 question.
Yeah, so it really depends on whether or not the jurisdiction's court recognizes the ledger. Because it could very well be a situation where they say, oh no, only ours is valid, anything else is not valid.
Yeah. Okay. So how about any real life practical experiences in your day-to-day prior experience that you have dealt with when you're dealing with blockchain technology involving IP? Any interesting cases that you guys like to cite?
I think there's two. One was a former client. Actually not a former, still client. Yeah, they are basically they do adult figurines, right? So they are very big into that. So like the Rolex story, same thing. They use blockchain, right, to verify, and by verifying through the blockchain ledger, right, they actually kept the value of the collectible, right? I always have this joke with my friend that's like, you are in the business of adult toys, literally. So that's one thing. And they actually also use blockchain, right, to actually organize the IP they actually license in from like Netflix, Walt Disney, Warner Brothers, and things like that, and did this immersive event exhibition, whereby through the blockchain application they actually immerse into the experience of looking at different movie sites. So that's one. The other one may be more practical for us in IP itself. I was at Atlanta for a meeting recently. For the International Trademark Association meeting, and a lot have been talking about how blockchain could or why AI blockchain essentially, how does it affect the trademark filing processes, right? For most of us, it's like at a certain point itself, right, when we move up the leadership chain, right, a lot of baseline work are still required, right? Right now, most of the work for trademark filing is actually done by paralegals and secretaries, right? So that's done. But how do you make sure that each process is being adhered to? The ledger tells you that.
Yes.
Right? You miss a step, right? We don't know where it is. So it's not so much to find fault, but actually look at where the gaps are and correct them. Because you do basically do cross-examination of all the ledgers at different time, right? You will see that there's a different gap, and if you fix the problem, that gap will go away. Like, the data will give you some insights to it. That's, to me, the two applications I can see in commercial.
I actually want to ask you this question. Okay. So, one of the best ways to use blockchain for IP protection is in terms of for enforcement. right, and proving that this was done at this time. So
Okay,
what
fair.
will you say about that?
The issue is this. Blockchain ledger is, as what we discussed, it is not universally accepted as evidence of infringement or use. So given that as a background setting, how are you going to submit to court saying that this is sufficient evidence that you have infringed? Do you have anything more beyond that? I think that is the kind of questions that I will shoot back at you, right? And also it involves coding, right? So what if there's a flaw? What is a human error involved in maybe he failed to recognize a certain insertion in the ledger or deletion in the ledger? How do you then show that, okay, this is 100% proof evidence of me infringing it? So that is where I would come from. Yeah. How about you guys? Or are you so confident that, no, it's 100% Rishi? There's
No,
no way, it's not flawed at all, it's a perfect system.
Yeah, actually, you just hit a very interesting spot in my mind also, in a sense. The standard evidence requirement in each country can differ. At the moment, we don't really see that as a uniform application in actually new technology itself. Some of the old concept may work, right? But if you let's say in Singapore itself, because Singapore is an inclusionary system, right? Everything is thrown for judge to assess and weigh them accordingly. So they may be omitted.
Yeah.
But in Australia, where I started,
Yeah.
that's going to be thrown out because what is that? Is it recorded or is it hearsay? That will be the first position to start in the litigation like that. So that means, right, different, you're right, other than recognizing, right, the rules of evidence, right, could be quite different in every different countries, and sometimes even in the same country, different courts.
Yeah.
Right? Like the administrative court in courts in New Zealand and Australia, they don't follow the strict rule of evidence.
Yes.
Whereas you go to magistrate court and above, district court and above, they will require you to do so. So it depends on where you start.
Yeah. So I think one of the final questions I'm going to ask is this. So blockchain is here, but where is it going according to you? Like from Singapore IPOS, I know you are from IPOS, and how is IPOS and maybe Singapore in general heading towards in terms of, let's say, use of blockchain or even AI in the management of IP and IA?
So I think if you guys, as I mentioned earlier, the Singapore IP Strategy 2030 was released a couple of years ago. One of it is actually talking about the registry of the future, which is actually what we were talking about just a moment ago. Using AI and also blockchain, right, to run through the processes to make prosecution more efficient, more effective, right? And if you look at the changes in the, I think it's called IPOS Digital Hub now, you can see quite a fair bit of changes in how the form respond and react with the system to actually capture like filing time. Because IP rights are very time sensitive itself. They're literally time sensitive. So that 1-2 minute right could basically determine whether your patent or trademark is defeated. So that's what I think that's the starting point.
Yep.
I think the development is there, and what more I understand from my ex-colleague, they are still developing it very, very passionately. And I think in the next few months you will see actually 4 more things are being introduced. And with that itself, you'll see that now there's IPOS Go, which is actually in your app itself, where you can do trademark searches literally on your phone. And that could not be possible without all this technology behind it.
Ezra?
I wanted to ask you, right, how safe do you think are the registries' protection in terms of globally, like in terms of trademark registry, patent registry, like how safe are their databases? How accurate are they? Is there ever a chance that it could be edited or hacked? Could there be like some kind of internal issue in terms of the registry itself that adds in or deducts something that they should not have done? Is that something that has been seen before?
I think during my time there, we were at a starting point of developing the system. So I think those are things already being considered. I thought when they're building the system, that would be something they do. But all of us here will know, right? Technology is technology, right?
Yeah.
There's nothing called bulletproof. But I think for my ex-colleague, I think as far as is possible, technologically and whatever they are doing now, from wherever they can see the problems that already lies out in the world, I think they have taken account of it.
I think there's something that I chatted with Dixon earlier on privately, so maybe I'll just share it in this panel. Now, how do you feel that now currently law firms or even in-house counsel like myself, we are still not well versed in the use of blockchain in our day-to-day runnings and all that? What is stopping us from embracing blockchain technology? And what are the pros? And of course, what are the cons of dwelling into blockchain technology, into not only management of IP, but other aspects of our legal management or law firm related advice to clients?
I think it's a twofold question. Number one, business like to find readily recognizable audiences. So people like you hit the jackpot, finance go, right? That's where all the focus is going in, right? And things like that. Where law firm is, because essentially there's two things. One, we are quite stingy, so we are not good market for them to go into, right? They look at so much effort, right, to get this one file, no point, right? This one thing. So we are not the target. So there are not a lot of readily addressable solution being geared towards us. That's number one. Number two, also because for us, if you think about it, it's like we still have to figure out, right, what are the stable lines within our work itself, right? We just have a chat. It's like our phone is 24/7 for good reason. Sometimes I switch it off, but it rings on itself. So I think my phone is being hacked at the moment. So the thing is that there's so many moving parts to things, right? So where are the things that actually you can look at? Maybe for more stable processes, like trademark applications, conveyancing maybe. These are places where the rules are set and things are quite okay. But if you look at the general legal advisory work, for example, I think most of us here can sit down, who sit here can agree that advisory work just don't really have a model. They have a thinking model, but it's not a delivery model. These are two different things. Yeah.
Ezra?
So that's a very good question, right? For every technology, it kind of actually follows a bell curve pattern. When it's young, right, the adoption is actually very slow. And then after that, it hits a curve, like a certain rate, and then at the point it plateaus. And then after that, it gets replaced by newer technology, and then people stop using that. Okay. So last time we used to use home phones. Who still use a home phone now? Right? Yeah. So blockchain is still very early in its attempt to prove itself as a valuable technology. Whereas AI kind of started a bit earlier than that, and a lot more effort was put into it. Not as much resources was put into cryptocurrency. Although currently everyone is kind of shocked by how much attention it gets from the speculative market, and is actually proving more to be a asset for speculation as opposed to a technology for use. So that is the problem with blockchain and crypto, right? It is still in the process of proving itself, and it has not done that yet. For certain things, we know it will work, but nobody actually is really so much interested in getting it to be used. Whereas for AI, it's the total opposite, right? The moment ChatGPT wowed everybody, right? All the companies, all the MNCs were like, we need to do this #1 priority right now. Everything also AI. Right now, you have AI on your WhatsApp, you have AI on your Facebook, you have AI on a number of apps that we have on our phone. It's been injected by a variety of companies because they actually see that, oh wow, this actually changes the service. So in terms of how blockchain would be integrated into our current technologies, I think we still have to see how it works out. I do see the value, but it's more of the problem that the industry isn't really on board as of now. Yeah.
Understand.
I like the one about home telephone. I still have a fax machine in my office. I'm not sure what to do with it.
What's to go fax?
I never use it.
So I think let's just finish this panel discussion off with the last question. So any advice for any upcoming young IP practitioners in relation to how they can look at blockchain and related technologies in their career growth? What would be your advice?
My previous supervisor in Gold Coast, Scott Pearson, will always say this: embrace change, right? He's the one who was really stubborn about it, but he just said embrace change. I think young practitioner today has more option than us when we graduated, and they have all more than that. They can look at, they shouldn't be just looking at blockchain or any technology associated with it as a purely legal endeavor journey. It could be a lot of things, right? They could be the guy who actually create that blockchain the lawyers needed. I don't know, right? They should again look at possibility rather than just going through that, okay, I'm graduating now, I'm looking at blockchain and how law firm going to work with it. Then there will be a missed opportunity. That's how I look at it.
Ezra? Any advice to the young graduates?
I actually think that young people are very informed, and I interview, I hire the Gen X people, right? No, Gen Y after me. Sorry, Gen Z. I'm millennial, so I'm actually Gen Z. Yeah, I actually lost count on my own number. I'm a millennial, so I interview, I hire Gen Z people, and they are very informed with technology. They know what is crypto about. They know what is blockchain. They can tell you how an AI works. Yeah, they can tell you what is an LLM, a large language model. So it's very impressive how on board they are with technology, because that's what they grew up with, right? It's like so familiar to them. And you see kids like maybe 3 years old, they already know how to use the iPad, know how to use the smartphone. So they are very much in the technology generation. So it will only improve from there. And you know, the sky is the limit. Right? If you look at what Apple just developed recently, like the VR thing, is the correct. It's more than VR. It's actually what's that word? AR. Yeah. So in the future, right? If everybody might start walking around with lenses, and then they can see So you might actually be on a video call with somebody, but you cannot see because it's inside. So we don't know how things are going to turn out, right? But the fact is that technology is improving at like super fast speed, and very soon we will start to see things, more and more things that would blow your mind.
So thanks for that, Ezra and Dixon. So that's the end of the panel session. Thanks for having us here, and hope looking forward to a good lunch. If you have any further questions, feel free to approach us. Thank you very much.